Let's continue our discussion on relationships of a saved person. We were talking about don't do anything that wage war within your souls last week. And we talked about what to abstain from, different areas. And I think the last thought I shared was abstinence from any thought that is contrary to being free. And so essentially what we learned is a lot of the things that happen to us, we bring it to ourselves. The Lord is very clear in His Word as to the instructions on how to live. Actually, we bring damage to ourselves sometimes. Now let's elaborate on submissive relationships. Let's go to 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 18. I think I read this last week also, but let me explain this to that tonight. Household slaves, submit to your masters with all reverence, not only to the good and gentle ones, but also to the cruel. For it brings a favor if because of a consciousness of God, someone endures grief from suffering unjustly. For what credit is there when you do wrong and are beaten? You endure it. But when you do what is good and suffer, if you endure it, this brings favor with God. So not all sufferings by way of punishment receives favor from the Lord. Okay, so for example, if you are guilty of what you are accused of, and so you are disciplined or punished by the law as a result of that, your punishment doesn't receive God's favor. But if you are in the right and you are suffering unjustly, then the favor of God goes on you. For you were called to this, because Christ also suffered for you, leaving you an example, that you should follow in His steps. He did not commit sin, and no deceit was found in His mouth. When He was insulted, He did not insult in return. When He suffered, He did not threaten, but entrusted Himself to the one who judges justly. He Himself bore our sins in His body on the tree, so that having died to sins, you might have righteousness. By His wounds you have been healed. For you were like sheep going astray, but you have now returned to the shepherd and overseer of your souls. You know, if you look at verse 24, we normally apply that verse to just physical sickness, right? By His wounds you were healed, right? But now we have seen the whole context of the passage. We are talking about war within your souls. We're talking about sufferings. That sickness is not only physical. It includes mental ailments. It includes solical matters. That is included in the healing. By His wounds you have been healed. So that healing goes deeper than the skin. It's actually healing of life. Okay? So, now to a Jewish home, or to believers' home in those days, a slave will be equivalent to a household help. Okay? And in household help, inevitably, there are abuses that takes place. You know, I followed some of the speeches of Duterte, especially when he's overseas. And you can feel the sufferings of the Filipino overseas workers. As a mayor in Davao, he went to Saudi Arabia to plead to the king for mercy. Because a maid, a household help, according to him, I think is about to be executed because her master raped her. And as a result, she killed her master. And so she's about to be killed. And so the family, she's supposed to be executed publicly. So the family pleaded with Mayor Duterte, and he went to Saudi Arabia. And he said he was able to have audience with a king, and I didn't realize in the 21st century it still happened. He said the king was in good mood during that time, and explained to him and said, Mr. Mayor, please understand the difference in the culture in Saudi Arabia and elsewhere. He said, the moment you are hired here, not talking about 21st century Saudi Arabia, the moment you are hired here in Saudi Arabia as a help, you can be raped. And that's legal. I was watching, I said, I replayed I was saying, what? And he said, what the guy did to her is legal in Saudi Arabia. And so he said to Mayor Duterte, please, I will grant your request. She will not be executed. Bring her home. But when you go home, tell this to your people. Especially when you are in remote, because where that girl was working was something like 6-7 hours away from the city. And the king said, especially when you are working in a rural place, when you are hired and you are a girl, you can be raped. And that is legal in Saudi Arabia. And that is 21st century. When I heard that, I said, whoa. Can you imagine the Filipino overseas workers, and then they come home, may mga kurakot, you know. That's why Duterte remove all of that. They can't open your banks and all of those things. I don't know now because Bongbong is the mayor. But when I heard that, I said, wow, that's happening. In Hong Kong, we were told, because one studio apartment that we went to, the brother of Brother Willie, is worth $1 million, US dollars. It's a very small apartment. I mean, just very small. I think almost as big as this stage. And one bedroom, the kitchen is very small. I mean, the kitchen is just as long as perhaps some of your countertops, you know. And there is no room for the help. And so a Filipina maid will be sleeping outside the door of the master, of the boss. And you know, if it's like me, in the middle of the night you wake up, you want to use the bathroom. Well, you want to use the bathroom, you go out, your maid has no room, and she's sleeping outside the door of your house. I mean, when you're sleeping, do you know what you're doing? If you move a lot, you know. And so it is common, this I was told, no, it is common for situations like that. The Filipino maid will be molested by the boss. And that is for a few more bucks. And if you can't complain in Saudi Arabia, you can't complain in Hong Kong. You know, so these are the kind of things that are going on. Now, in the Bible days, that is happening also. Now, remember whom Peter was addressing. And the amazing thing is this. Peter, it's governed by the Roman rules, so there's a little bit of rights if you're a Roman citizen. But here it says in the labor market, even if your master is bad or good, you are to submit. Do you know there are certain things in the scriptures that when I read, I'm having difficulty swallowing because of my understanding of the ancient culture. But that is what the Bible says. You know, it's a very ideal situation. They are working to survive. And you know, you translate that in today's, a lot of the complaints that really workers today have, biblically, it doesn't meet the standards. You know, I think we have been enraptured by our culture, and I think we have made a mistake with the law of man, with the law of God. Yes, we have our rights, but that right is limited because we have the divine authority over us. We are not supposed to be bad-mouthing our bosses. We are not supposed to be putting them down. Well, I don't like my boss. Find another job. No, because listen, if we don't do this, what will happen is, as a Christian, it can corrupt our hearts. Bitterness. can get into our system and say, look, they're making so much money. That's their money. It's not yours. If you agreed, say, for example, on a $10 an hour, that is your agreement. You signed on it. If they make more profit, that is their profit. That is not yours. Somebody is selling the idea to us that when somebody makes more profit, you are supposed to share some of it. Not necessarily. There is a contract. There is a contract that you are going to work for so many hours, for so many dollars per hour. That is the contract. I mean, if you sign a $1 per hour contract and they make $1 million per hour, that's none of your business, really. You know. And here you are dealing with Roman rule that is very tyrannical. And Peter, and by the way, Peter was crucified upside down by this government, and he wrote this letter. Righteous submission is to the good and the Gentile and to the cruel. The Gentile and the cruel. Now, accept this. There are cruel bosses. Yeah. Both Christians and non-Christians. I told you about well, we have a friend. I believe he's still a friend. The last time I called him, he did not return my call. You know, but he told me this, an American. He told me this. He said, help a Filipino. And we were laughing, we were having fun. Then it slid out of his mouth, he said. Because when a Filipino owes you, he owes you for life. Now, I heard it. Well, because we have the culture of putang na loob, we don't say, I owe you one. Filipinos don't say that. Americans say that, I owe you one. We don't say that. We just say I owe you. Actually, we don't even say, I owe you. You have a debt of gratitude now, which is supposed to foster relationship. You know, that is actually what favors do. It fosters relationships. An American will say, "I owe you one," and then the moment they return the paperwork, quits. Not in an Asian setting. In an Asian setting, it fosters relationships. But I was really upset when I heard him say that. He said, because you give favor to a Filipino, and then he used the word, he is your slave for life. And it's a missionary. This is what this guy was in his orientation. That is what he was given, you know. But listen, if you think you will only have cruel bosses that are unbelievers, you are wrong. You will have cruel bosses that are believers. I told you when I was in the ministry, I was the only intern to my knowledge that was promoted after 8 months. But my salary increase was not given for over 2 years. I mean, the pastor there owes me a lot of money. You know, the moment you get promoted, your salary more than triples. Plus, of course, my position was high, and then you have housing allowance. Everything increases. All of that was not given to me for 2 years, but for over 2 years. But I still submitted. Yeah. And then when he found out, he got upset with me. He said, next time you should tell me. And I told him, no, I won't. I said, because I have determined in my heart, as far as ministry is concerned, you're not my boss, it's God. You're an earthly boss to me, but my ultimate boss is God. But that is my decision. But I have seen a lot of Christians get hurt by this. And this is where the faith life comes in. Who is your provider, and who is the one who ultimately looks at you? Now, if you suffer under a master wrongly, Peter guarantees immediately you earn divine favor. Now you have to take it by faith. The moment you earn divine favor, the favor of the Lord is always accompanied by blessings with no sorrow attached to it. Okay? I'm telling you, the blessings that me and my wife are receiving right now, I believe they are a result of God's favor, because together we endured a lot of things in the early years of our marriage and our relationship with different people. Yeah. And so when God gives you a favor, there's not a guarantee that tomorrow you'll receive blessing. There is already a blessing given to you. When you are going to receive it, when you're going to need it, I don't know. But it is there. Okay? If your boss unjustly make you suffer, the Lord will never look kindly on that boss. And that is also in the scriptures. Okay? What is important is you need to be able to control your attitude. Do not expect that everybody will treat you well. Okay? I think you are living in a dream world. And I'm telling you, even fellow Christians will not treat you right because they are also human. They are also growing. They have their hurts and they have their pains and they have their own reasons. Now, today's reality tells us that we have good and bad employees also, not just employers. Today, we know that there are good and bad employees also. The masters, in this case, the masters are not told to submit to them. Okay? The employers are never told to submit to the employees. It is still the workers who are told to submit to them. That is just the rules of the trade. Now, what causes or motivates this submissive attitude that prevents war in your souls? Again, because if you don't deal with this properly, and later on we're going to go to submission in the family, it can embitter you. And if you are living a very bitter life, I'm going to see my boss again. There is war in your soul already. That immediately becomes to your disadvantage. Because God looks at the heart, not at the outside. He looks at the heart. And the moment your heart is filled with bitterness, God will never look kindly at that. Okay? Submission is also tested when it is not convenient or comfortable for you. Now, most of the submission we see today is when it only suits them or when it is convenient. Can you imagine if you will only submit because it's useful to you? There will be no submission. There will be taking advantage of one another. Now, this is a call exemplified by Jesus Christ. Who sinned? The world. Who died? Jesus. Is there anything fair there? Nothing. Nothing is fair there. Yeah. Who has a broken soul? Us. Who bear the wounds on his back for the healing of those broken souls? Him. Everything that Jesus endured, he endured for us on our behalf. He submitted to that. Lord, if it's possible, let this cup pass over me. Nevertheless, that cup is cup of suffering. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will. When Judah was about to be taken to Babylon in a forceful submission, they were subjugated because they were conquered. God sent a message to the prophets, submit, or you will die. If the tyrants that came, if you fight them, they'll kill you. They're more powerful than you are. And now remember, God is telling the people, remember, you don't have my favor. I still love you, but you don't have my favor anymore because you rebelled against my word. Now, this is something that you have to understand about God. You will lose his favor, but he still loves you and still gives you his word. And God said, because of this, you did not honor the Sabbath, you did things that violated my law, you will suffer. But submit so you will live. You will be exiled. Get some work there, God says. Get some work. Build your house. Get married. Have children. And after 70 years, I'll bring you back. He said, but if you oppose Babylon, you will die. That's what God said. So you see, God says, if you submit to them, it's because you invited it to yourself. Some of the animosity, some of the hostility we cause. Okay? We cause. Now, we causing it can be good or bad. For example, if I teach what is right, and I invited hostility of those who doesn't like the right, well, I invited it. John is telling me that there's a new disease today, monkey fox, right? What? Pox. Monkey. Fox monkey. What's chicken pox? Oh, monkey pox. Okay. What's that? And he said that it is mostly found on homosexuals. Yeah. But I think in the U.S. government, the Secretary of Health don't want to say that. Because if they say that, then, what's the term you use? It will stigmatize the X-Men, you know. But at the same time, if you don't say that, then you are not warning the X-Men. For example, you know that most of the people with HIV, I don't know right now the statistics, but the homosexuals. Yeah, that's where it came from. Now, if you don't say that, then you don't forewarn them against that ungodly behavior. In your desire to please them, you kill them. You see? But if you say that the way I'm saying it, of course they will not like you. So that is for the good. You will really invite that kind of thing. So Jesus invited those hostility, not willingly, because he stand for what is right. He'd rather obey than disobey the word. So we can see in this what submission really is. Jesus did not allow anybody to go against the word, and we are told to follow in his footsteps. He did not commit sin. No deceit was found in his mouth. He did not return insult for insult. I think we are very quick to draw insult when we are being insulted, you know. When he suffered, he did not make threats to the ones causing his suffering. He endured because he trusted in God. You know, and he submitted to God. Why? Because God is a good master. And these good masters told him, you will die for the sins of the people. You will bear on your back the weaknesses, the infirmities of humanity. You will bear all of that. And he says, I submit. That's it. Now, can you imagine sometimes we think, that's why people, some evangelicals teaches, if you follow God, everything will be easy. No, it's not. Some of the things that God will tell you is really going to go against the grains of this world. Okay? It will go against. Especially now. It is more pronounced now. I don't know how long this is going to be, if this is it. Okay? But the Sunday when I continue to teach about the signpost, part 3. There goes your title. We will talk about that. How God deals with us in those areas. Jesus submitted to all of the things that he went through because we were like a sheep going astray. And this submission facilitated our return to the shepherd or overseer of our souls. Okay? Now let's go to the next topic. Submission in family context or relationship. You know, this is one of the difficult passages to teach, like Christmas and New Year. Because every time I read this, wives submit to your husbands. I mean, how many times do I have to read this, you know? But it's there, so let's read it, okay? 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 1. Are you ready? Amen. Those who are not married were the ones who said amen, you know? In the same way, wives, Are there any wives here? Akala ko malalakas ang bunganga ng mga babae. Ang hina. I'm not looking, okay? In the same way, wives. Present. Submit yourselves. I like this translation. To your own husbands. That means not to everybody, but to your own husbands. So know who your husband is, okay? Now, the problem is if you don't know who it is. So. Even if some disobey the word, now this will be, even if some husbands disobey the word, they may be won over without a word by the way their wives live. You know, some wives think that they have to preach all the time. No. I said some wives think that they have to preach all the time. It says no. Nobody is agreeing with me. Huh? Yeah. Wives think they have to talk all the time. It says here, without a word. Can wives survive without a word? You see, even my wife, your mother, is silent, you know. She's not talking. When they observe your pure, reverent lives, don't let your beauty consist. Now, this is a very strong word. It's a command. Don't let your beauty consist of outward things like elaborate hairstyles, wearing gold jewelry, or fine clothes. I mean, those of you who love signatures, this is it. It's what's being discussed here. But rather what is inside the heart. The imperishable quality of a gentle and quiet spirit. You know, I would like to ask the husbands here, but I'll just ask it quietly and don't answer, okay? Are your wives gentle and quiet? I mean, the husbands got quiet, you know. This is a good verse, which is of great worth in God's sight. Whoa. Can you imagine all the wives here? If you are gentle and quiet, the Bible says, that's of great worth in God's sight. What is the comparatives here? Great worth than the gold earrings and the hairstyle and the signature clothings. The outward beauty. Greater than that. Kakalungkot naman wala nag-aamin, no? You know? For in the past, the holy women who put their hope in God also adorned themselves in this way. So they did not deprive themselves, submitting to their own husbands. Just as Sarah obeyed Abraham. You know, sometimes I'm wondering about this because in some passages it was Abraham who obeyed Sarah, you know. But this is what Peter said. Calling him Lord. You have become her children when you do what is good and do not fear any intimidation. So now you're submissive, but you are not supposed to be intimidated. You see, some husbands, some wives, when they are intimidated by their husbands, they are not submissive. They are subjugated. There's a big difference between submissiveness and being subjugated. Husbands in the same way. Any husbands here? Okay. They have a better amen. Husbands in the same way. Look at this. Live with your wives. I guess some husbands during the time of Peter can no longer tolerate it. They could not live with their wives anymore. That's why the command is live with their wives in an understanding way. As with a weaker partner, we have to explain what a weaker partner is. Showing them honor as co-heirs of the grace of life, so that your prayers will not be hindered. I like actually this translation better, okay? I'll explain this. Wow. Now this is now touching the immediate family. Let's notice the progression or the continuation of the use of the word submit or the command to submit. In verse 13, submit to every human authority. Okay? Now, there is no mistaking when say submit to every human authority. There is no mistaking who our president is, who the police chief is, who the mayor is. I mean, who is the mayor of Chicago? Lori Lightfoot. Does anybody here look like Lori Lightfoot? Nobody, right? That means there is no mistaking. You can't say, well, submit to me. No, there's no mistaking. I want you to see the context here. There is no mistaking. You submit to government authorities. Second, verse 18. Household slaves who submit to their masters. Now, we have no problem when we say that. We say, well, I'm the boss, so the employees submit to me. No reversal. Wives submit to your husband, to your own husbands. Immediately, in some sectors, they will follow it up, hey, submit to one another. Well, that's a different verse. The command to submit as far as a spousal relationship is concerned is wives submit to your husbands. Now, I already told you the continuation of the word submit. There is no mistaking in us submitting to government authority. In our mind, it cannot be reversed. It's not two-way, okay? It's not two-way. It's one way. It's subjects submitting to government authorities. As far as slaves and masters are concerned, it's also one way. It's slaves submitting to the masters, not two-way. What makes some people think that wives submit to your husbands is two-way? I'm showing you how to interpret the scriptures. But what makes, immediately we change that into two-way. What causes the change? It's cowardice. We refuse to think that this is one way. This is one way. Because the husband's command is different. Okay? Now I will explain that to you. Here, wives submit to your own husbands. Not all husbands. My wife is only supposed to submit to me, not to any other husbands. You know. She submit to any other husband, that is adultery. Are you listening? Because she only belongs to one husband. Now we're talking about primary relationship. So in verse 13, you really have no opinion on who to submit to, for they just come and enforce their will in this context to a defeated nation. The Romans came and said, this is our will. And so you have to submit. No reversal. You can perhaps negotiate, but at bottom line, you still submit. The government made you subject to their authorities. So what we need to do is an attitude change. It's just like an election. After Bongbong Marcos was elected, immediately you have Isko Moreno, another candidate saying, hey, let's be one now. That's submission. I don't like the result of the election, but that is what prevailed. I mean, whether you like it or not, the president of the U.S. is Biden. Whether you like it or not. You know, it annoys my son when I tell him your commander-in-chief is Biden. But he cannot do anything about it. That's his commander-in-chief. Okay? Now, there is no contest also when it comes to your bosses. Because in verse 13, slaves have no choice but to submit to their masters. Now, again, in the context of that day, it's because of conquest and because they were poor or they lost everything. Either way, it is against their will. And against their will, they become subject to the Romans. Against their will, they become subject to their masters who wants to become a slave. But it's still attitude check. You have to submit. Now you go to your husband. You say, well, you choose. Well, there's a big difference now. Because in those days, there's really not that much choice. If you are a slave, your master will appoint your husband or your wife. That's why you have to live. I don't care if you don't like that woman, you have to live with that woman. That is the context. Okay? Now, if you are in a Jewish family, marriages are arranged. I don't care if you don't like that man, you have to submit to that person. I don't care if you don't like that woman, you have to live with that woman. And I like the rendering of Paul says, love your wives, but Peter says, live with them. So now, loving your wives involves living with them. You cannot say, I love my wife, and you don't want to live with her. Well, let's put a distance now, okay? So that I don't have to kill her. No. Loving her involves living with her, not with anybody else. Okay? Now, this is regardless of the times we are living in, we can apply it. Now, not all are husbands, and not all are wives. So to your own husbands and to your own wives. If you can submit to that which is not yours, governing authorities, it was forced upon you. You don't own the government, but you can submit. If you can submit to your bosses, you don't own them. They can fire you anytime. How much more can you not submit to that which is yours? Now look at this, the possessive. Your husband is yours. How do you show your appreciation to what is yours? By submission. You know, that means, for example, I am my wife's to your own husband. How does she display appreciation for that? By submission, not possession. Not possession. Submission, not possession. So if you can submit to that which is not yours, how much more to that which is yours? So your husband also signifies free choice. Because even though such and such was the culture of that day, there is a free choice involved, actually. Especially if you are really free people, as a Roman citizen is free. They still have what they call as the freedom to choose whom to marry. Now, let's add a few more observations, okay? The mention of gold, jewelries, fine clothes, elaborate hairstyle. In our trip to Turkey and Greece, we found out that the wives copy their hairstyle, right? To their goddess, Athena. Yeah. So they are, and that is easily applicable here. You know, you are the wives, the goddess of beauty. They have this goddess of beauty. So this is the hairstyle of the goddess of beauty. You will find that the wives wanted to copy that hairstyle. You say, what does it have to do with me? Everybody does it today. You worship an actress, you worship a model, you copy their hairstyle, you copy their clothing. And sometimes, I mean, husbands perhaps are obliged to buy and to sustain those kinds of capricious behavior because they are copying their goddess. And isn't it that we can apply that not only to the wives but also to all? We are basically following those whom we idolize. And that is what is being addressed here. So, the mention of gold, jewelry, fine clothes, elaborate hairstyles, and other expensive things seems to indicate that Peter was actually addressing some rich wives. You know, the idea of a dowry is rich in those days. Now, in a poor family in those days, this is not even discussed. You think a poor family of slaves will be talking about, what will be your hairstyle tomorrow? Who cares? They don't discuss this. So the fact that hairstyle, what earrings will you wear tomorrow? What earrings? I'm going to be scrubbing floors. I'm going to be cleaning the toilet. What earrings are you talking about? So there is a big possibility here that these are rich housewives. Okay? Submission will require a gentle and quiet spirit. The word quiet here it doesn't mean they don't talk. It means they are well-ordered, well-mannered spirit. So, submission. The parents, we abhor when you're talking to your kids and they're very feisty and they answer back quickly before your sentence is even finished. That is not a well-mannered, that is not a well-ordered spirit. Because this does not prevent disagreement, but it encourages it in a gentle and well-ordered spirit. Okay. So, for example, you look at parents to the children. If the parents are discussing things with their children, they hate it when the children won't even let them finish. Oh, husbands are the same. When husbands are saying something and the mouth of the wife is like putakte, you know. That is not a well-ordered spirit. That is an indication of an insubmissive behavior. Again, this is an attitude thing. That's why submission will require gentle and quiet spirit. Now, the mention of Sarah seems to agree with the last two observations, the gold, the jewelries, and the gentle and quiet spirit. When you are submitted also, it's not caused by fear or being intimidated. When you submit, you are not afraid. You submit, listen to this, you submit to those whom you love. You are subjugated by those whom you hate. Okay? If we are under Roman rule, you are going to be subjugated. You hate them, but you submit anyways. But actually, it's a submission. You are subjugated. That's why we have to be very careful. For example, when parents coerce their children, you subjugate them, and they obey you, and you say, they love me. No, they don't. You subjugated them. Children who truly love their parents submit. Wives who truly love their husbands submit. Okay? Is that clear? Well, you can say amen on the first part, but not the second part, okay? Look at this. You guys look very quiet. It's bad. Now, let's move to the husbands, okay? Husbands are called to live with their wives. Again, Paul said love. Peter said live. Paul said love. Away naman sila. Peter said live. You know? Those two are always in disagreement. Live with your wives has the idea of not just cohabiting. I like the word live with your wives. The word actually means to build up or to construct various parts. Build up, construct various parts of your family, your household. Husbands, live with your wives, meaning husbands, build and construct the various part of your household. Why is this important? Especially if you're a husband in the first century. Why is this important? If you're a soldier, you leave. So when you leave, what do you tell the wife? Huh? You're going to go to war, maybe for 2 years. What do you tell the wife? Well, of course, they will stay in the house. It's automatic. But what you're about to leave, or say you work overseas, or their daily lives, you're going to work and you're going to be back at the night time. What do you tell your wife? Is your wife stays at home? Take care of everything. You're in charge. Peter said, no. You can't do that. You can't do that. What it says is, husbands, leave or with your wife build up or construct the various parts of your household. You know, I'm gonna go to war. This is probably gonna be a 1-year thing. Okay? We are having problem with our son. Wife, I'm gone. You're in charge now. Peter said, no. You are not supposed to leave that responsibility to your wife, because you are supposed to live with her. You are supposed to build and construct. Wife, this aspect of our family life at this juncture of our relationship, we have growing kids. They're beginning to be rebellious. Let's do this together. These are the rules. This is what we do. And the wife will say, well, you're going to be gone for 1 year. What's going to happen? I'll send you help. Okay? We have household help here. I will put them in charge of certain authorities. They will help you. If that son of ours, who is bigger than you, start to misbehave, I'm authorizing this male slave to beat him up or to put him in line. I think the application is, I think too many cowardly husbands leave responsibilities to their wives. You aren't supposed to. You are supposed to build and construct the house with her. The problem is when there is no such a thing as 100% delegation. You can't say, well, she is in charge of this. Whoa, that's not what's being communicated by Peter here. What is being communicated by Peter is build it with her. Don't let her be on her own alone. Now remember, these are soldiers, and even in today's context, you leave in the morning, you come back at night. That is still the context. If you leave everything to the wife, then you don't follow this rule. You are not building and constructing with her. Okay? Now this is the complaint. Hey, you know, your son, your daughter is very complicated. Well, I put you in charge of that. It's your problem. No, that is wrong. Oh, really? In spite of the help I gave you, in spite of this, our children are still undisciplined. What more can we do? You build with them. You don't put one hand. Because, look, either you're the head of the house or you're not. I say this, we have chores, we have rules in the house, but I have veto power. In spite of all the rules that we have in the house, if I want something done, I have veto power. I just say this is going to be done this way. Because from the command of Peter, I cannot put my wife 100% in charge of anything. Yeah. Because I am supposed to live with her. I'm supposed to build with her. Let's do this. Let's do that. For example, my wife says, well, we're getting older, she said, even our mortgage has to be fully paid, you know. Now, of course, I put her in charge of our finances. You're in charge of the house. But it doesn't mean I can't do it with her. Practically every expenses that we do, I know. I have to agree. This afternoon, a decision has to be made. So I told her, do the following things. And she said, well, because we are mourning with somebody who lost their husband. And so the wife says, any gift that you guys will give it to this charity. I told my wife, no, you will not give it to the charity. I don't believe in the charity. Because I've heard a lot of things about the charity. I said, you give it directly to her. This is for her. You see, so I am not, although she is my business manager, she cannot spend the money without my knowledge. Why? Because I build the finances with her. It's part of constructing our house. Okay? You know, one of our kids have a problem with reading. What are we going to do? Let's enroll in speed reading. I said, I agree. Let's find a program. Let's find a school. Okay, we deliberate. That means she is not doing it on her own. I am living with her. You know, if you look at the Odyssey of Homer, yeah, when Odysseus was called by the king to fight in Troy, his boy, Telemachus, that's the name, right? Was just newly born. And so the wife is now in charge of the kingdom. But the boy needs to be raised as a man. He needs to be a learned person, knows how to read, knows how to write, knows philosophy, knows how to fight. The wife cannot teach all of that. So he leaves her help by the name of a guy who is a trusted help in his house. The name is mentor. That's where we get the word mentor. So mentor raised Telemachus, but not raised by himself. That is how Odysseus raised the boy. With her. Okay, so she's out for years. And the boy was already a young man when he came back. He's out for years, but he still raised the boy. He still built the house with her. They say the problem in America is absentee fathers. They're not present. That's why the wife ends up doing something that she is not commanded by the Lord to do. Now, look at this. To live is to stay or to build or construct something. Now, this is a process. And because this is a process, there has to be some progress. And this is again where we fail, I think. Okay, let's have a godly family, godly children. And something wrong is happening. And the wife said to the husband, hey husband, well, we did everything we could. Just let it be. Wrong. Because you are not seeing progress. When you are not seeing progress, it's the responsibility of the husband to live with the wife. Meaning to build or construct every aspect of the household. That's what you call as loving your wife, living with your wife. Let's build it together. Okay? Well, something is wrong with this aspect. I don't know how, well, perhaps it's very natural to us, although I trust my wife with a lot of things. There's not a day, what are we going to do with this? What are we going to do with that? What is happening? She is asking for my support to live with her, to build with her, to construct with her every aspect of our family. By the way, we're just living that. I don't have this explanation when we're living that. You know, it's just that when I'm teaching something like this, I have to look at the word again and study this and find nuggets like this. Because I have been teaching this for so many times. Why is it that Peter gave this command, husbands, live with your wives? Because Peter reminds the husbands that their wives are weaker partners. Say weaker partners.
Weaker partners.
Now, certainly you should know that weaker here doesn't mean physical. I mean, some wives are really stronger than their husbands. I mean, before, when me and my wife walks, my wife will tell me, you're walking too fast. Now it's the reverse. And you're walking too fast, you know. It's not about physical strength. word weaker doesn't mean inferior. But look at this definition, okay? If you look at this word and study it, the word weaker here means he has some incapacity or limitation. Husbands are reminded that their wives are weaker vessels or have some incapacities or limitations. Now, that becomes more meaningful now. What do you mean by incapacities or limitations? I believe that this has something to do with the building of the family. You know how some weak husbands say to the wives, you're in charge of this and leave it alone. I'll tell you what this passage says. This passage are saying wives alone doesn't have the ability or the capacity to build the family according to the will of God. Yeah. I think that is one of the fundamental lies that is being taught. You know why the American family is in disarray? Because fatherless households. The wives are left to build something, but the Bible already says they are the weaker vessels. And weaker doesn't mean physically. I mean, some wives can outwork, can outcarry their husbands. Weaker means they have some incapacity or limitations. That incapacity or limitations can only be supported by the husband. What is the incapacity or the limitation? The will of God. It needs the headship of the husband. Therefore, when a man leaves it all to the woman, they are not fulfilling the will of God. I don't know, maybe by observation, I have said this to you so many times. I believe my wife is a lot more intelligent than I am. But I always find her, whatever decision she makes or idea she comes up with, I always find her unable or limited to finalize any decision. Yeah, the execution. Yeah. You know, we are searching on some properties in the Philippines. So my wife told me, what are the parameters? I said, these are the parameters. Immediately, within few hours, I have 120 emails from her. I said, I'm not going to look at all of that. And she will tell me, did you look at the emails? I said, no. I said, the reason why I'm telling you, give me 2 or 3 choices, because I don't have the time to look at all of those things. But looking at all the finds that she has, she instinctively finds that she's limited and has no capacity to make the final decision. Is this really the right choice? Now, alone, for example, if she's not married and she's by herself, I believe she'll be making all the decisions by herself. But she's not alone, she's married. And she is not building a business, she's building a family. Wives have limitations and incapacity to build that family by themselves. That's why the husbands has to live with their wives, meaning don't leave them alone. When a man leaves it all to the woman, they are not fulfilling the will of God. Now, disobedience to this command will result in what? What prayers are going to be hindered? Look at the context now. For your family. The husband prays, Lord, I want to have a great house. I want to have great kids. Yeah, but you don't live with your wife. You don't build or construct the family with her. It didn't say actually that your prayers will not be answered. Your prayers will be hindered. Meaning, it's being answered, but it's hindered. Where did we find that? Remember when Daniel was praying? God sent Gabriel. Gabriel was hindered until Michael came to help. And so you told the wife, do this, do this, do that, do that. And she is struggling. You're praying, I'm praying. It's hindered. You know why it's hindered? Michael did not come to help. The Michael issue. Gabriel cannot do it alone. the Michael issue. That's the only way the prayer of Daniel was now unhindered after Michael came. Sometimes husbands looks like peacocks saying, well, I'm believing God for this, believing God for that. Believe all you want regarding your family. If you don't live with your wife, that prayer will be hindered. It's not going to work. Are you following me? So what happened? Because the wives don't have the capacity, they have the limitations, therefore, the immediate context of a husband's hindered prayer is for the formation of a godly family. Okay? And the word hindered here is really, it really means slow or difficult in terms of progress or maturity. Ang bagal naman. You know, when is this? It's so hard. You know, who is this? Well, we observe our kids, and sometimes my wife will be bothered and said, how come this child of ours seems to have a very little progress when it comes to academics? And I'll tell my wife, just hold it. It will shoot up. It will progress. And she'll say, why? I say, well, you see the progress that he is or she is making. And then suddenly it will show up. But it needs the support of both of us. I cannot leave my wife alone to raise my kids. She doesn't have that capacity. Yeah, she doesn't have it. That's why what's happening in the U.S. right now with this homosexual thing, can you imagine two men trying to build a family? It's ruined at the very beginning. Ruined. Can you imagine two women trying to build a family? It's not going to work. It requires the husband. Husband, live with your wives. It didn't say wives, live with your wives. Husbands, live with your wives. Without that household cannot be built. And prayers will be hindered. Okay? So I think with this, it gives us one of the primary reasons why households are not being built properly according to God's design. Now, a lot of this, me and my wife, we just stumbled. We really don't have, because I look at the models. Well, primarily I did. I look at the models, and I don't like my pastor in the Philippines raises his family. I don't like it. Some of my colleagues, I don't like the way they raise their families. So I end up stumbling, looking at all of these things, and I said, this is what's in the scriptures, this is what's in the scriptures. And we talk all the time. Talk all the time. And so, at one time, when it comes to finances, my wife is telling me, man, we're short, we're this. This was years ago. And she's very bothered. And so I look at my wife and says, Ann, did we spend any of our money in vices? She said, no. Did we gamble? She said, no. Did we overspend on vain things? She said, no. I said, so your answer is no. I said, don't worry about it. We're doing well. And she'll say, but it's too, there's almost no. I said, it doesn't matter. We're doing the right thing. You know, I'll discuss it. And she always needs assurance. Did we pay our tithes? Yes. Did we give our offerings? Yes. Did we buy something that we cannot afford? No. And she will say, look, you know how I purchased. I said, then we didn't do anything wrong. But the ends doesn't meet. I said, we're just short right now. It will come. Because we're doing the right thing. But you see, somebody has got to live with her and assure her of that thing. Because if I am out and there is no assurance coming to her, she will go crazy. She will go nuts saying, I'm not doing the right thing. And even when I'm in mission, she'll call me and say, I cannot do it. I'm not doing the right thing. I said, no, you're okay. You're doing the right thing. You're doing the right thing. And sometimes they have to be pacified like that. You're doing the right thing. Now, you don't come across saying, you're doing the wrong thing. Oh, just whatever. No, not like, you build it with her. You construct it with her. That is a missing piece in today's families. Amen? Well, I'm out of time, so we'll continue the missing piece next week, okay? Praise God. Let's all stand.